Okay.
But David, to view that, you click on the participants and there's a tab for panelists and attendees. So right now it shows 4.
Oh, I got it. Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah, once we start the webinar, it opens it up to attendees. So right now, because we haven't started it yet, the attendees, if they show up, won't.
Okay. But you don't have any in the waiting room right now either?
Nobody's there yet.
Okay.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mr. Huboy, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm not sure who asked, is that Mr. Early asked that question?
No, that was the mayor. Mr.
Oh, the
Mayor is
mayor.
here.
Oh, the mayor, Ignacio.
You didn't recognize the Mr. Huboy?
Well, usually you say Mr. Ubois.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's in a different settings.
Yeah. Oh, that's in a different setting. Okay. Since I'm in a public setting, it's Mr. Huboy.
Yeah, that would confuse everybody if I said that.
Either way, it's fine with me. Ignacio, how are you?
Doing good, buddy. Doing good.
It's good to have you on board.
Good to see you
here.
all.
And it's good to see you, Roland. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hi there.
Oh, council member.
All right. Whenever you guys are ready to start, we can get going. It is now 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I think Carrie and I are ready, so it would be up to staff to say when to go.
Staff, let us know when you're ready, and I'll call the meeting to order and we can get started.
We are good to go.
All right, let's call this meeting to order and let's get started. You want to take it from there?
Was that the entire introduction for?
That's it. I'm streamlining tonight.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm David Early, and I am a principal with PlaceWorks, and we are the consultants for the general plan. I want to welcome everyone to meeting number 2 of the General Plan Advisory Committee. We have with us tonight the 3 members of the committee. In person in the City Hall is Planning Commissioner David Huboy, and online on the Zoom call are Mayor Ignacio Velazquez and Council Member Roland Resendez. I think most people know that at this point, the GPAC is made up of just those 3 representatives. Also attending here tonight are myself and Carrie Stone, who's our project manager at PlaceWorks. We're both online. And in City Hall, you have staff, I believe that Eva Kelly, Amber Cameron, Brian Swanson, and Abraham Prado are all there. And I can't see, did I miss anyone? Okay, that's all right. And I do want to note, just for the record, that we have 7 attendees in the audience as well at this point, and of course, attendees may come and go. Unless there's anything else, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk about tonight's agenda and move us forward through the agenda. I might note while I'm doing that the mayor, as the chair of this committee, has asked that I go ahead and facilitate the meetings. But of course, the mayor is the chairman of the committee and is welcome to interject at any time. And obviously all 3 committee members will be engaged throughout the process. So let me just begin by talking about tonight's agenda. We've pretty much had the welcoming already. We'll come back to see if there's any GPAC reports or disclosures of any contact they've had. Then we will be taking public comment regarding any items that are not on the agenda. And then we have 2 items on the agenda that are the major items. First, we have the general plan vision statement, which was published as a draft about 4 to 6 weeks ago. And we hope that we can get GPAC comment and possible buy-in on that this evening. And then we're going to be doing a presentation about existing conditions. We are in the process of preparing existing conditions reports, and there are half of those reports tonight. And then at GPAC meeting number 3, we will include the other half. Are there any questions about tonight's agenda from the committee members?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right,
I'm good.
okay. So then let me ask if there are any reports from any of the 3 GPAC members about any contact you've had with members of the public about the business of the committee.
I have not had anybody asking anything recently.
Nor have I.
I have nothing to report.
All right, okay. So then we will move right along to public comment and item on any item that's not on the agenda. I think members of the public may know that under state law, we're required to, and we welcome members of the public to speak on any item not on the agenda. We will be having public comment on the 2 agenda items later on, so now is not the time for those comments. But any other comments are welcome at this time. You should understand that because other items are not on the agenda, state law precludes us from taking action on them, other than the committee members could ask them to be agendized at a later time. With that said, I think that I actually don't know how the technology works, so I'll ask someone there at City Hall. Can people raise their hands electronically, or how do we know to call on people?
Yes, people can raise their hands electronically, and right now we have no hands raised for items not on the agenda.
Okay, so I just want to give this a half a minute. If you did want to speak on any item not on the agenda, you would need to raise your hand electronically through the Zoom app. There's a button for that, I believe, down generally at the bottom of your screen. And if we see any hands raised, we will recognize them, and otherwise we will move on. And staff, I want to clarify also, there are no public members in the audience at City Hall tonight. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right.
And at
okay.
this time, we still have no hands raised, David.
All right. Okay. Well, then I think we'll close that agenda item and move on then to the actual business of tonight's meeting. And I'm going to start with the general plan vision statement. And I'm gonna, here we go. Yeah, so we've finished the public comment. I'm gonna go on now to the general plan vision statement. And I'm just gonna give a brief presentation about the vision document. Then we're going to be able to take any questions from the 3 GPAC members. We will then take public comment, and then we will come back to the GPAC discussion, any changes or edits that GPAC members want to make, and then hopefully an action to move this on to review by the City Council, which I believe is on our agenda to do early next year after our existing conditions work is done. So I'm going to be talking now about what the general plan vision statement is, the process by which it was developed. I'm going to talk about the vision statement itself, which includes both a vision and a set of values, and I'll go over those next steps again at the end. So general plan vision statement is really the underpinning, the foundation of the entire general plan that we're developing. And one of the things you may have heard me say several times is I think that the city actually has an excellent general plan right now in the form of the 2005 general plan, but one of the things it actually does not have is an overt vision statement that really lays out in very simple terms what Hollister seeks to become and to remain through the implementation of the general plan. So it's one of the things we're adding. We have built on a lot of the values and issues that we see in the current general plan, and we've also built on the many meetings that we've already had with GPAC members, with city staff, and with members of the community. And so this vision statement is intended to describe the future of Hollister as you all would like it to be in 2040. It's intended at a very basic level to express shared community values and to relate to all the key topics that need to be covered in the general plan. And then once we have it in place, it will guide preparation of the general plan goals and policies. And you see in this graphic on the right that the vision statement in that sense is overarching over everything else. The goals that we will be working with later, many of which are already in the current general plan, flow from that vision statement, and then individual policies and actions flow from the goals, Tonight, we're looking only at this simple vision statement. So an example of this is that the vision statement, as drafted, it does include a statement that we hope in the future that residents can both live and work in Hollister. So that's a part of the draft vision statement tonight. A goal that might flow from that moving forward when we look at the general plan in more detail would be increasing local jobs, and then policies and actions that could implement that goal would be both creating new land use designations for commercial uses, for example, at the airport, and also, for instance, an action to develop a program to attract new businesses to the industrial park. These are just examples, but examples of the kinds of policies and actions that you might see come from a goal, which again comes from the vision statement. So to create this vision statement, we have actually held 4 virtual visioning workshops and also had online engagement tools available. Online engagement tools were available for a total of 2 months in both June and July of this year. And we had virtual visioning workshops. You see them listed here on June 27th, June 30th, July 8th, and July 9th. And I don't have an exact count, but I think we had at least 70 or so people at those workshops altogether, and then quite a bit of involvement in the online tools as well. And you see some examples in these pictures of both the Zoom virtual visioning workshops at the top of the page and some of the online engagement summaries at the bottom. Some of the items that we heard as we collected input through that process were the things you see here. I'll just name a few and you can read along. Maintaining the friendly small town feel, fostering diversity, equity, and inclusivity, a mix of housing types, supporting the downtown. You can see all down this list, all the way down to the bottom of coordinating efforts with San Benito County and other agencies, and supporting schools, youth-oriented programs, and the arts. And so all of these items that you see here on this slide are ones that we tried to bring together into a narrative statement of both values and the vision itself. So let me start now by talking about the vision statement. And as I've already said, the vision statement actually has 2 different parts. First, it has a statement of 4 values. And again, these are all drafts. We want to hear from the public and then the GPEC about them tonight. But our 4 draft values that we've put together are equity, diversity, innovation, and sustainability. And you can see the text here. For equity, we say to ensure that everyone is treated fairly, there's equal access to city services and infrastructure, and the effects of future decisions are shared by the entire community. For diversity, we say that we respect our diverse cultural, religious, and political backgrounds. We welcome and support all ages, incomes, and abilities. Innovation, we think boldly, we foster new ideas and generate opportunity. And sustainability, our actions contribute to our social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And I want to really underscore that these 4 values are values that came up over and over again, both in the online work we did and in all 4 of the public workshops that we held. We did hear other values as well, but a little less frequently, but these 4 really came up to the top as values that large numbers of members in the community really wanted to see supported. So those are the draft values: equity, diversity, innovation, and sustainability. And then we'll go on and look at the vision itself. There are a lot of words on this screen, but I want to point out that this is the entire vision statement. So it fits pretty easily on 1 or 2 pages of paper. The general plan itself will probably be several hundred pages long, but this is really meant to be a 1 to 2 page summary, as succinct as possible, of all the ideas that we're trying to realize through the general plan. So I am going to go ahead and take the time to read this so everyone can follow along. Forgive me that it is a little long, but again, it's intended to be as brief as possible while capturing all the things within this that the community wants to see as part of its vision. So we start by saying that Hollister is the heart of San Benito County, a place where people come to live, work, and play. People choose to live here because of the strong sense of community, diversity, and wide range of housing types for all income levels. Framed by the Diablo Range and surrounding agricultural uses, Hollister preserves its historic past and ensures that new development complements the small town charm. High quality design and strong architectural character attract people to retail areas and contribute to a sense of place. Known as an innovation hub, Hollister attracts businesses to its downtown, its industrial park, and its airport so that they can collaborate with each other and benefit from the diverse labor pool. Tourists add to Hollister's economic diversity by dining, shopping, and staying in Hollister while en route to Pinnacles National Park and the surrounding wineries. The availability of high-quality jobs means that residents can work locally, freeing up time that might otherwise be spent commuting. Traveling by car, bus, bicycle, or on foot are all easy in Hollister. Neighborhoods, schools, shops, jobs, healthcare, and public services are connected by bikeways, walkways, and transit lines. Community life flourishes in Hollister. A vibrant downtown, lively art scene, inviting parks and public spaces, and activities and services for all people of all ages help forge connection and well-being. New growth is primarily focused in existing urban areas or adjacent to existing development to enhance connectedness and preserve agricultural uses and open space areas. The city coordinates with the County of San Benito and other local agencies to ensure growth is well planned and provided with sufficient services. Hollister is a unique and diverse city that is and will remain a place to call home for generations to come. So let me just summarize that by pointing out we've got a first paragraph here about the overall character of the community and the reasons that people choose to live here, and a little bit about the diversity of housing types at all income levels. Then we have a paragraph about labor and work and making it more of a workplace, and I think it goes without saying this is a future vision. I think we all agree the community could use more jobs today, but part of this vision is a variety of jobs in the downtown, the industrial park, the airport, industries, tourism, and so forth. Then we have a brief paragraph about transportation and in its multitude of forms. We have a brief paragraph about community life, arts, the vibrant downtown, parks and public spaces. We have a paragraph about managing growth and coordinating with the county as growth is managed and agriculture and open space areas are preserved. And we have a final very brief wrap up about Hollister as a unique and diverse city and remaining such a place for generations to come. So that gives you an overview of the vision, and we've gotten to read through it together. We will take specific comments on that, specific even word changes that people might like, and we'll hear those both from the public and also from the GPAC itself. So my last slide here is just to say that our hope is that we'll get closure on this from the GPAC this evening, and then we will be bringing these forward to both the Planning Commission and City Council when our existing conditions work and other steps are done in the early part of next year. And this vision, even after it's accepted hopefully tonight, will begin to guide the development of the goals, policies, and land use changes in the general plan. So that ends my presentation on this. We're going to go on now to questions from the GPAC and then to public comment, and then we'll come back for GPAC comments and any action. So right now, rather than hearing comments from the three GPAC members, I want to open it up just for your questions that you might have.
Are there any questions from the members? Mr. Huboy?
I have no questions at this time.
Mr. Resendez?
I do have one question. The very first statement that said that Hollister is a place, I think, where everybody works. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Well, again, this is part of our vision. So we're not saying that everyone who lives in Hollister today can work in Hollister today. Obviously, they don't. But one of the things that we heard over and over again from members of the community as we talked with them both in our virtual meetings and through our web application was that people would really like to see additional economic opportunity and particularly job opportunity in Hollister. There's a great recognition of both the airport and the industrial park as land bases, the airport in particular as a site where, because you have a transportation hub there, you have a possibility for economic development. People are very aware of the very attractive downtown. People are aware of the tourism possibilities of the national park and the wineries. And most importantly, people really desire that there be additional job opportunities in Hollister. So it did seem to us that a fundamental part of this vision for the future of Hollister is additional economic development and additional job creation.
good. I don't disagree with that at all. But I don't know if that's like what we're leaning towards like 40 years from now. That might change. I'm just wondering what's the purpose of that one statement or that one line.
Well, maybe I'm not. Let me put the screen back up and just make sure we're talking about the same thing. So there's not a first line. So the very first line says it's a place where people come to live, work, and play. So we're trying here to capture in this first line the idea that Hollister would be a diverse community, a place where there are a lot of residents and people living, a place where people can find jobs, and a place where people can come, either whether they live here, work here, or come as visitors, that they can come and recreate here as well. Is that the first sentence?
Can you go back to one more slide? I'm sorry. I think it's one more before. One more before that. Sorry. And then one more. I'm sorry. Where was that one line? I think it might be one more. I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe it was here.
What is that? Yeah,
So that's just an example. So this is not an actual part of the vision statement. This is certainly, forgive me if this was unclear. This is certainly not the vision statement, just residents can live and work in Hollister. It was meant as an example that if the vision statement were to say residents can live and work in Hollister, that could be implemented through increased local jobs as a goal, and that goal could be implemented by the policies and actions that you see here. But that particular sentence, residents can live and work in Hollister, is not verbatim part of the vision statement. It's just here as an example.
Got it. And then I was just wondering if we can add in Hollister Hills, because that is a big part of our tourism, right after the national park. I think if we can add in Hollister Hills, and wineries, those are my only two suggestions at this time.
Yeah. It's funny, as I read it out loud, I thought just now, why do we not have Hollister Hills written in here? So I appreciate you bringing that up. Mr. Mayor, do you have any questions before we take public comment?
I would say I was very pleased to see the what was expressed here, and to hear or read some of the comments about preserving our small town feeling, the historic part of our community, and understanding the importance of working together to keep it that way in a better planned manner. So I liked what happened here. I really do, and I liked a lot of the comments, and I'm excited to keep moving forward with this vision. This is what, it captures what do we want to be in 40 years. And if we understand that now, 40 years from now, we don't have to say, what happened to us? Where did we go wrong?
Right.
Lost our small town feel and became a big suburb. So, we can capture this and then really get it out to the public to strive for it. We can get there.
Yeah, that's exactly the intent. So thank you for saying that. Let me clarify, since both of you mentioned 40 years, there is very long-term planning, like 40 years done, particularly in some other states. Oregon suggests a 40-year time frame. Here in California, our general plans usually have about a 20-year horizon. We'll be working we're working with the horizon year of 2040, which has a 40 in it, but it's only 20 years from now. And I just want to make sure the public is aware that it's about a 20-year planning horizon that we're hoping to be able to work for. And just so the public knows too, we would hope that about every 10 years, a general plan like this can be updated. So you do it on a rolling basis. Every 10 years, you look 20 years forward. Once you come back to that 10-year time, your current general plan has about 10 years left on it, and you start looking again in 20 years into the future.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I also want to say is that I read through the public comments. I appreciate all the participation from the general public in that regard. A lot of the comments were very insightful and enlightening. I do have some comments. I guess I'll reserve that after public comment to
Yes, I think it would be
edits.
appropriate to listen to any public comment in case public comments also spur you to have any other changes. I'd encourage all three of you to make notes when we take public comment, because it will be up to any of the three of you. If public comments do resonate with you, it would be up to one or more of you to bring up those comments as well as your own to consider any changes.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, so if you're ready, we'll open the public comment. I see two hands are raised. First, Lee Shahinian, and then, well, we had a second one, but she seems to be gone now. But we'll recognize Lee first, and then if there are others, here's Roxanne Stevens will be second, and anyone else who would like to speak can raise their hand also. So Lee, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and a real pleasure to be with all of you this evening. I was struck by in a very positive sense by the draft values of innovation and sustainability. And in that regard, one thing that came to my mind and has come to my mind in the past is rail transportation. I live in Los Altos, and so Silicon Valley, but while Hollister has its own unique character and appeal, it is nevertheless a suburb or a residential extension of Silicon Valley. And I think looking ahead, if we can somehow try to envision passenger rail transportation between Hollister and San Jose, for example, that could be a game changer. And one thing I would say, having lived in the Bay Area for most of my life, all of my life really, the BART is a great example of what maybe to avoid. 20 or 30 years ago, there was an opportunity to extend BART down the peninsula. And it was a county by county vote, and San Mateo County voted against it. So even though Santa Clara County and areas further north said yes, the no vote in San Mateo killed the deal, and we still today don't have BART. And every year it gets more impossible and more expensive. You know, they're talking like $100 million a mile at a time. I mean, just literally impossible for a variety of reasons. And I would hate to see Hollister be in that situation 20 years from now where, gosh, rail did look like a good idea, but there was some opposition. They didn't think it was the right thing, and now it's impossible. So if that makes sense to consider, because I know there already is a rail line, and I realize it is privately held, it's not for passenger use and so forth. But if that could be adopted, if the value of that potential could be seized as part of the Hollister vision, I think it could make an incredible difference with this community. It could make commuting more reasonable, more sustainable, as we're looking at getting beyond gasoline cars. It could make Hollister more inviting for people that want to, quote unquote, escape to the country and go out into, like you see now, people leaving New York City and going up the Hudson River Valley, as one of my nephews just did, for a more sustainable way of life. So I think that kind of connection ought to be given serious consideration for your vision.
Thank you very much. I should mention, and I'll start the timer, we would like to limit these comments to 3 minutes per speaker so that we get through everybody. Right now we have Roxanne Stevens and then Carminder Brown. Roxanne? I think maybe staff needs to do something. There we go, Roxanne.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for taking my comment. I'm going to make it really quick. I just had a question around like using what we do, what we're putting together as a vision statement in like branding and marketing. My concern about what's the way that it looks now, the vision statement, although I like all the elements of it, I think it captures a lot of what would be great for Hollister. And if we use that as a foundation for setting goals, I think it would be incredible. But I do think that we need to have a more abbreviated vision statement, one that's used for like marketing and branding. What I think makes a really, really good vision statement is when you can have it in like a small placard, and you can post it anywhere, and somebody could just walk by it and read it and then get a real good sense of the vision of Hollister. So I'm hoping that this is sort of like the broad vision, but that there's going to be maybe an executive summary version of the visions, so that we're keeping in mind that we need to be able to use it in marketing and stuff, and a long vision statement like this isn't going to help. What it looks more like to me is it looks like the first paragraph is a vision and the rest of it are tenets that apply to that vision. So anyway, I just wanted to make that comment, but also say that I really love everything that's on it. I think there's a lot of really good things on it, but I do think that a shorter versions of that would be really helpful.
All right, thank you very much for that comment. The next speaker and the only other person with their hand raised at this time is Carminder Brown. Go ahead, you're muted, but you can start speaking as soon as you unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Carminder Brown.
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you very much for hearing my comment. I work with the San Benito Agricultural Land Trust, and I also coordinate the San Benito Working Landscapes Group. So my focus in San Benito County is on agricultural working lands. And I wanted to just suggest a couple really minor changes to the wording in the first paragraph for your consideration, where it says framed by Diablo Mountain Range and surrounding agricultural uses. I wanted to suggest adding the Gabalon Mountain Range, which is also a really important part and actually really does frame our county geographically. It's the range that you see on the south side of Highway 156 as you drive from San Juan Bautista to Hollister, and it continues all the way down to Pinnacles National Park. So I'd love to see the addition of the Gabalon Range to that sentence. And I would like to suggest changing the phrase agricultural uses in that first paragraph to agricultural lands or agricultural landscapes, or perhaps to working agricultural lands, as I feel that that would better convey what those lands mean to everybody, not just people who work in agriculture, but also people who, appreciate the landscapes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
And I'd be happy to submit that in writing if it would be helpful. It looks like the chat is disabled, but.
Yeah, the chat is disabled. I know Carrie is taking notes, and other members of the committee, I believe, are taking notes too. So I apologize that the chat is disabled. We talked about enabling it before, and I don't think we actually can technologically, but I'm sure we have several people who have your suggestions, and if the GPAS asks for them, we can go over them again.
Sure, thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, we do have another hand raised from, I'm not sure if it's Jan or Jan Grist. So Jan or Jan, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and speak.
It's Jan Grist. And I would like to see a little bit more in maybe the first sentence about welcoming or friendly that Hollister is, the community itself, and that we welcome all travelers and soon to be people that want to live here, but we are a very, very friendly town, and we welcome everyone who comes.
Thank you for that comment. This time I see no other hands, so I will just talk for a moment here just to see if anyone else does want to raise a hand. I'll just say thank you very much from the people who did speak. We really appreciate those comments. And unless I see another hand right away, what we'll do now is we'll turn it back to the committee. And I think Mr. Mayor generally likes to start with Planning Commissioner Huboy, then we'll go to Councilmember Resendez, and then to the mayor. And I would suggest that you each, we maybe give an overview of your thoughts, and then if you do have specific comments, we'll come back to those and go through them one by one and make sure that they're addressed. So I don't see any more hands that have come up. So I will close the public comment period on this and turn it over to the committee and ask first Commissioner Huboy if you'd like to speak in general, and then mention any specific comments you might have.
Thank you, David. Yes, generally speaking, I think the vision statement certainly captures a lot of the comments that I read from the last 4 workshops. I think it's well written. There's one value of sustainability that I think that we can maybe highlight a little bit. I know that some of the comments that I saw from my good friend Sean Novak from the Water Resources Association was saying how important water is. And I know I did read about preservation of open land. As a former green building professional, as I said, on the first 2005 general plan, I was able to make some contributions on green building policy. So, and climate change is certainly on a lot of people's minds these days. So what I'm suggesting is a minor little revision, which would be the second to the last paragraph, I believe, where the sentence reads, "The city coordinates with the County of San Benito and other local agencies to ensure growth is well planned and provided with sufficient services." I think it goes without saying that the growth will be well planned. What I'm suggesting is perhaps rewriting that sentence to say the city coordinates with the County of San Benito and other local agencies to ensure growth is sustainable and that enables sufficient services and resources. And the other minor comment I had is, and one of the reasons that I fell in love with Hollister in the first place, other than the open spaces, was the historic downtown. And that goes to where we talk about community life flourishes in Hollister, a vibrant downtown. Perhaps we could say a vibrant historic downtown, because I think that should be mentioned, that whole streetscape of San Benito Street and Monterey Street is in the historic district. Those are historic buildings. And other than that, I mean, I was prepared to make a few comments on some of the public comments that I read. I thought were very intriguing. But I can withhold that.
Yeah, that
for
would
later.
be great. You know, I said let's hear all your comments at once, but I'm realizing maybe it would make more sense just because these are pretty discrete items. With the consent of all three committee members, maybe we can go through the two that you've already mentioned and see if there is a consensus in favor of each of those. Councilmember Resendez already suggested one about the Hollister Hills area. Maybe we can take those three, make sure that they're all acceptable, and then Commissioner Huboy, you could continue. Would that be all right?
That'll be fine.
Okay, so let me ask first. So Commissioner Huboy, you suggested changing the sentence at the end of the paragraph about coordination with San Benito County. I don't know if the other two committee members would like that read again, but we could get it from you later as long as it's acceptable. Do all three of you consent to that, or would either of the other two of you like to hear it again?
I'd like to hear it again, and maybe we can see it on the screen. It'd be helpful.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, in terms of getting it on the screen, should I open a document and try and share my screen, or could a staff member? Was that a yes, Carrie? Should I do that?
I think so. I think that's probably easiest.
Okay, let me, this will take a moment, so please bear with me. All right, Commissioner Huboy, if you could read it again, I will type it. I guess I can go ahead and share my screen first.
I'll read
Hang
my
on
suggested.
a moment again, just a moment. Oh, that was the wrong thing here. Yeah. All right, go ahead and read that now.
I'll read my suggested edited version.
Yes, please.
Okay. The city coordinates with the county of San Benito and other local agencies to ensure growth, yes, is sustainable. That enables sufficient services and resources.
I think I missed a word.
Sure, growth is sustainable, and that enables. And I mean, it probably maybe can be tweaked a little bit
I think it's
more.
actually, if all due respect, it's maybe better, right, like this?
Okay, and enables services and resources, yeah. What I'm saying is that as sustainability is one of our four draft values, it's one thing to say that growth is well planned, but it's a step above to say growth will be sustainable. I think that would be a cut above on what we're trying to say and accomplish.
And I might say, and I don't have a clear opinion, but you could say well-planned, sustainable, and enables services and resources.
Yeah, we could say it that way. We could add well planned, but I think that, again, I say that it sort of goes without saying that.
Yeah. So, Council Member and Mr. Mayor, how do you feel about this proposed change? And would you like the word well-planned in there, or should it just be sustainable and enable services and resources?
I do like the well-planned in there. And I appreciate Mr. Huboy's comments there. I think very important comments. So thank you, Mr. Huboy.
You're welcome, Mr. Chair.
And Councilmember Resendez, is this okay for you also?
Yeah, I'm not entirely opposed to it, but can I see that old sentence, what it was?
That will take me a moment, but yes, we can make that happen. I don't know if it's possible for you to have a copy of the document in front of you. Otherwise, I can be going back and forth. It just takes a little bit of work. So here's the previous version. It's no longer on full screen, but it's this sentence right here where my little hand is, starting with the city coordinates.
Yeah, I think the edit, the requested by David Huboy is certainly okay.
Okay, and can I ask, was this meant to be enables, or would it still be provides, which was what the previous language was?
Well, you could say provides.
Oh, and I'm realizing you probably all can't see what I was just looking at.
It said, the original said provided, past tense. I just want to get the message I'm trying to say is that growth will be well planned, but it will also be sensitive, environmental friendly to our limited resources, which I think is more paramount today than ever.
Can you all see the white screen that I'm typing on now?
Yes.
Okay, so I've changed it now to say as well planned, which we heard from the mayor, sustainable, and provided with needed services and resources.
Right, and by planning your growth and embracing sustainable growth and green building policies, it will help sustain our resources, not only the buildings themselves, but also the resources, the limited resources that we have. And that goes, a thank you to my friend Sean Novak for his comments about water.
So I think we have consensus to take this sentence to replace the one in the text. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And then the next one was to add historic to the downtown.
Yes, because I think that's it's rather unique with the peculiarities or the settings of our downtown, is that whole San Benito Street is in a National Historic District. Am I correct to say that, Abraham? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. That's downtown is one of two places that the city of Hollister has that is in National Register.
National Register, right.
So the current language refers to a vibrant downtown, and the proposal is to change it to say historic.
A vibrant,
downtown.
Historic downtown.
Yeah. So is there consent for that from all three members?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then if I can just backtrack a little, Councilmember Resendez asked us to add Hollister Hills. And I think it would be the Hollisterville State Vehicle Recreation Area, right?
Correct.
To list of destinations. Is that all? Is that also acceptable to all of you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then I think if you're all willing to, then we can go on with Commissioner Huboy And you mentioned that you had specific items from the public comment you'd like to bring up. And then from there, we'll go on to Councilmember Resendez and then see if the mayor has any additional items.
Yes, yes. Go back to my notes here. Again, I thought that a lot of these public comments and were very insightful. I did make some comments. Let's see if I can go back to, just one moment, please. Well, I'll just say is, I don't have my notes in front of me. I did, I took actually, I took pride in three-holing punch all the public comments and organized everything in a binder here, and now I'm, maybe it's over that vision. Well, I recall that for equity and diversity, there was some comments that to achieve equity and diversity, it's a matter of responding to all income levels in our community with a diverse housing types and accessibility, and I thought those were very, very insightful. There was one comment about that a guy named Dan mentioned about that he shouldn't have to leave our city to, and he said recreate, and I was wondering, what is recreate? I don't know if you recall that comment. And we shouldn't have to leave Hollister and leave our place of work to recreate. And I wondered what he meant by that. And I thought, when I first came out of the Silicon Valley area looking for a house because my wife was pregnant and I couldn't afford housing up in San Jose, I thought that it was over congested. And to recreate actually means, in a sense of, to be able to express oneself. And it's very difficult to be able to express yourself when you're in traffic and you're in a congested area. So when I came out here to Hollister with the historic downtown and the open spaces, you can express yourself in many ways. One way is to get involved in the community and do community service work. One way is to start a business. One way is to express yourself in the arts or in music. And Hollister, and from my personal experience here, being able to start a business, be able to express myself with community service and forming partnerships and helping people better their lives and the best I can to help in my capacity, limited capacity. It's wonderful to be able to escape the congestion of a downtown like San Jose, where you're fighting for parking places, you're behind the parking, you're in a car in traffic, you're in a stressful situation, and come to Hollister to be able to relax with the open spaces, to sit down under a tree, to think about things, and to be able to express yourself. And I think that the comment from Dan about recreating, in a way you can recreate yourself from a congested area to coming to a beautiful city like Hollister, because it's unique in its diversity and its open spaces, and the people are so welcoming. And so that was a comment I wanted to make. It had me thinking today. Because I actually, one of the things that I also express myself is with my art and my music, and being involved in community affairs in the church and here at City Hall. And I don't think I could have done that in a large city in a congested area. So as we grow, I think it's helpful to be mindful to have an environment, a built environment that can nurture self-expression. And I think it's very important to many people, not only just grown-ups, but to children, to have a nurturing environment so they can go out and get involved with nature and explore things and be able to cultivate what they want to do in life.
David, sorry to interrupt you, but I think we all definitely appreciate those comments. But I think we're just going to make some little tweaks here and there on the draft vision. I don't think we want to go too far into.
So yeah, I was wondering about the same thing. If you wanted to, Commissioner and others, you know, we have this sentence that I'm pointing out with my hand. I think you can see it: a vibrant downtown, lively arts scene, and so on. You could add something like a bucolic setting, comma, vibrant downtown, lively arts scene, etc. Help forge connection, self-expression, and well-being. I'm just trying to really encapsulate in a few words the things you were talking about. I don't know if you would like to make that a formal proposal, or if you would just like to make sure your comments have been noted by the public and the committee members, and then we can move on.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning that, and now that I've finished making my comment regarding the public comments and self-expression, I think that would be a great addition to say, for all ages, connection, what was that, connection?
Right, well, so I was suggesting adding here, right at the beginning, can you all see my hand on the screen? Yeah, so it would say the bucolic setting, comma, and then continue with vibrant downtown, lively arts scene, and so forth. So one addition there, the bucolic setting, and then down here, help forge connection, comma, self-expression, and well-being.
I would like that.
I personally would just stay with the vibrant downtown. It just needs to flow a little easier, so when people do read it, they know what we're talking about here.
Okay.
I do like the other part, the self-expression.
The self-expression.
Yes, I think that is very important because we want to be a inviting community. We want to make sure people know they come to our community, they're going to be treated with respect, no matter who they are. And we want to make sure that we're really promoting that part of our community.
So, Mr. Chair, did I hear you correctly that you would be in favor of adding self-expression to that?
Oh, absolutely, I would be.
Oh, great.
I put my other white screen up here and I added in the second row because it's in the same sentence. So we wouldn't be adding the bucolic setting, so I didn't put that here, but we would add under forge, we would say forging self-expression as well as the other two qualities.
Yeah, I apologize. I lost a little focus on the tweaking the vision statement, but I just wanted to share that with you for the public comments.
So I heard the mayor say that he supports that. Councilmember Resendez, is that all right for you also?
Absolutely.
Great, okay. Commissioner Huboy, any other comments before we move on to Councilmember Resendez?
No, and thank you for your indulgence on that.
All right, okay. Now I'm going to stop the share just for a moment. I can always put it back up, but Councilmember Resendez, let's take your general comments and then any other specific items you have.
Generally speaking, I think it's very well written. I want to thank everybody that came to give input. And I want to thank all the staff that worked on it, first and foremost. Next, I do want to talk about what some of the comments were from the public. So Commissioner Stevens, I think she brought up a very good point, but I don't know if this is the appropriate place to do that as far as like summarizing what she's suggesting. I think we can do that, you know, by using some of our partners in the community as far as like the HDA, the Chamber, the EDC. I wrote down, what the other speaker, I forgot her name. I think it was Carminder. What she said about the Gavilan Hills, I think that is very relevant and it's very important to include that. We have our college named after that. And I love the word that she said, agricultural landscape. So I'm definitely in favor of adding both of those things. And I think that also complements what Commissioner Huboy said as far as like self-expression. I hear it all the time. People love our agricultural landscapes. And it really just encompasses, you know, how beautiful and the character of the area that we live in. So I absolutely am in favor of that. I did also like what School Board Member Jan Grist said is about inclusiveness and welcoming. I think that our town or our city is known to be very welcoming and very inclusive and very friendly. So if we can take into consideration her comments, and I think that was okay. I think that was all I had for you guys, so.
All right, so let me just verify that that will be okay with the other committee members. And I think I've seen Gabalon spelled both with a B and a V as in Victor, but I believe B is the correct spelling.
Correct.
And are they I've heard them as the Gabalon, is it Gabalon Range? Okay.
I believe so, yes.
So we will add that right where we talk about the Coast Range. And then the second comment was to change agricultural uses to agricultural landscape.
Yes.
All right, and I take it that that's acceptable to all three of you.
Yes, and I appreciate Carminder Brown's comment about Gabalon Range. That certainly is part of our scenic landscape.
I'm sorry, I think that's Commissioner Huboy. I'm having a hard trouble understanding.
Oh, I agree with the statements, comments by Carminder Brown about the Gabalon Range and the agricultural landscape.
Okay, right. And then, Councilmember Resendez, you did mention the school commissioner, school board members' comments, and I honestly couldn't quite, I think it was just poor connection, but I'm not sure if there was a specific change you were recommending.
There's language about us being a friendly, welcoming, inclusive.
Oh, right. Okay, so let me go back here. Yeah, so I think the suggestion was to get it here in the very first sentence. It could be a friendly place where people could come to live, work, and play. A friendly, welcoming place.
A welcoming place, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think those were her words. And then that's it. I think it's very well written. Thank you, guys. I think it really does summarize who we are and what we're about. And just to piggyback off what the mayor said, I think a lot of times we're like, we have this identity crisis, or I've heard we have an identity crisis, and I really think this is going to help to summarize who we are as a community and what we want, the direction we want to head in. So thank you guys again. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, there was one more comment by Lee Shahinian, I believe Shahinian.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Huboy, I'm again having a hard time hearing.
There was a comment by.
And since I've interrupted, let me just verify first for all three of you that adding the word welcoming in the first sentence is acceptable to all three of you.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
So Commissioner Huboy, then go on from there, but if you could maybe speak a little closer to the microphone. That would help
Yes.
both of us.
The first comment, the first member of the general public that spoke, Lee Shahinen, he had some words about the importance of public transit. I don't know.
Right, and particularly about train transit. I'll share the screen again so you can see the words there. Let me mention that Carrie and I talked about this particular item quite a bit. We are concerned that the relatively small number of people in Hollister and the low densities might make it very difficult in the next 20 years to actually have a functioning railroad line and a transit railroad line. And we don't want to write this vision with sort of direction to staff to work on a thing a lot that may not be able to come to fruition. So we did very purposely say connected by bikeways, walkways, and transit lines. And certainly rail service is part of that transit line, would be a transit line. If you wanted us to, we might find a way to say something like a potential rail future or something. It would be up to you, but I guess I just want you to know that we did think about that particular point quite a bit, and we agree it would be great to be able to have rail transit, but we just weren't sure that it was a realistic part of the vision for the next 20 years.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
You want to take it, Roland, or do you want me to take that?
You
Go ahead. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, Roland.
I don't know if we necessarily agree on this, but I think that that's sufficient. The way that you wrote it is sufficient. I don't know if we need to be as specific. I do support the idea. I do think that's something we are considering, but I don't know if we need to be as specific as requested by the public speaker. That's why I did not bring it up.
Mr. Mayor, do you have any comment one way or the other?
I just wanted to let everybody know that actually we just completed a study for the rail line, and the goal is to have that implemented in the next 10 years. So we are moving in that direction, and that just was recent where we got the report back on that rail line and what we do with it. So it is part of our plan to get that implemented over the next 10 years.
Well, that's great, and I have to admit I wasn't aware of that, but that may be a reason we can, I think I did not share my screen successfully earlier. Let me try and do that again. We could say here, I'm pointing here, it says bikeways, walkways, and transit lines. It could say and rail and bus and rail transit lines, or just bus and rail lines, if you do think that that's a part of what you'll be working on in these next 10 years.
It has to be, and this is some of the issues I think we've had in the past. This is why I appreciated Mr. Huboy's comments. You know, we need to be committed to what we're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, we seem to stray off and not get some of these things done. This was something we pushed very hard for, to get that study done and get us moving in that direction. And something I was very passionate, along with the other COG members, to get that done along with Highway 25. So that is absolutely in play, and it's something we absolutely have to follow up on. It's going to be part of, as the gentleman brought up, part of the future tourism into our community, along with those that do continue to commute out of town. So very important piece of what we're going to try to become the next, by 2040, obviously.
Okay, well then I would make the suggestion, as I typed here, can you all see the white screen right now? I've highlighted in gray here that we change the word transit lines and that to bus and rail lines, so that people can see rail as part of that vision.
Yep, thank you.
All right, council member, did you have any other items before we go on to the mayor?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, do you have any other comments or specific changes?
No, I think we caught all the comments there, and I too want to thank everybody for their suggestions. Really impressive what all of you come up with and all the input from the public. Very exciting.
All right, at your pleasure, we could take this now, I think, as consensus to move this forward. If you'd like one of you to make a formal motion, we could have a vote for the record. We can be as formal or informal as you would like here.
Thank you. Is there a motion from one of the directors?
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to make a motion. And before I do that, I just want to thank you for your efforts with the COG board and about the rail. It's happy to hear that. It's extremely important component to our future. And with that said, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and move this vision statement forward to the Planning Commission and City Council, I guess. Hopefully I said that right.
Thank you. So there is a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So we have the consensus. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'm just saving this to my computer, and I'm now going to move on. We do have one more agenda item this evening, so I'm going to share the screen again and go back to my slideshow. And we finished up here on the vision. Oh, let's see, yes. And so we're going to go on. We had questions, we had public comment, we had the GPAC discussion and direction, and we're now ready to go to our second item, which is the existing conditions. And as I said earlier, tonight is part one of our existing conditions work. We've done a total of about 12 chapters so far, which I'm going to give a brief summary of this evening. And then those are the chapters you see listed here. At our next meeting, we will be doing part two, which are the additional 6 items you see on this list. There are only 6 of them. There are more this evening, but the ones coming in part two are honestly some of the meatier ones. And it's not listed on this slide, but we will also, as part of part two, be doing the assessment of the current general plan and any items within it that need to be given particular attention. So that'll be another part of part two of this work. So part two is not tonight. Part one that you see listed here are the items that we're going to talk about briefly this evening. So what I'm going to do is give 1 or 2 slides of overview about each of the items. There's not really an action for you to take this evening, but we do want members of the public to be able to ask questions and make comments about these items, and we want to do the same with you. So once I go through my presentation, I'll open it up for any questions you may have, then we'll do public comment again, and then we can wrap up with any further questions or comments that you as the committee members may have. So let's start with agricultural resources. I think all of us know that Hollister is at the center of a very vibrant agricultural region. Previously, the economy was really based completely on the cultivation of fruits, nuts, and row crops. Hollister has become increasingly urban and diversified, but it still is the seat of agriculture within San Benito County. And we do suggest in our existing conditions report that the city needs to continue to coordinate with the county and the San Benito Agricultural Land Trust, particularly to require mitigation of agricultural land when lands are converted. The county already has a policy in its general plan to that effect, and we would encourage the city to consider that as well. You can see from this chart that there's been a loss of prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance within San Benito County over the past 20, 30 years. And so it is a significant issue that we do see farmland being converted. And because of that, we want to make sure that some mitigation can occur. The second item, and these are in alphabetical order, so not an order of importance or anything else. The second order is air quality. There are, although air quality in Hollister is very good in most ways, and it is a small town, there are existing recurring violations of both federal and state standards for ozone. The general plan needs to consider the effects and impacts to children, the elderly, chronically ill, and others, but from freeways, warehouses, and other substantial polluters, and needs to help reduce indoor air pollutant concentrations as well. We have looked extensively at biological resources. I think probably, well, let me say there are a number of occurrences of special status plants in the area. They're particularly in the outskirts and particularly up in the hills, although there are some known occurrences in some portions of the city as well. These plants are vulnerable to off-road vehicles, to fire and fuel reduction, competition that occurs when non-native invasive species come in. And to me, perhaps most interestingly, is there are critical habitats for both the California tiger salamander and the California red-legged frog immediately adjacent to the city. And the tiger salamander is here where I'm pointing with the little hand on my screen in an area immediately east of Fairview where development is occurring at this time. So working with the county to be sure that there are adequate mitigation measures in place to avoid impacts to the California tiger salamander, which is a designated species, would be important. And then finally, you would want to continue to implement policies to require site-specific assessments of both sensitive habitats and species before development projects move forward. We have looked also at cultural and tribal resources that have to do with historic issues, archaeological issues, and Native American issues. There has been a very strong Native American presence in the greater Hollister area, although we don't have good documentation of any known tribal resources in the area today. We have been in touch, or we've mailed letters as required by law for consultation with recognized tribes and have not heard back from them so far. But Hollister does, of course, also have very important historic resources. There are already 2 recognized historic districts, the Monterey Street District and the Downtown Hollister Historic District. These represent very important architectural heritage sites for the city. They're shown at the center of the city on this map. But interestingly, from what we understand, there has not been a formal inventory of culture and historic resources in the city. And that can be a very expensive undertaking, but in a city with as much history as Hollister, that may be something that you would do, probably not as part of the general plan update. You haven't budgeted for it or planned for it, but it may be an implementation action to consider once the general plan is done. We've done quite a bit of work on the arts also. The arts as its own subject here. Most of this is information that will also go into the environmental impact report about the general plan. The arts projects and programs are not required to be covered in the EIR, but they are still, of course, very, very important to Hollister's vitality, and there's a great history of these kinds of arts programs in Hollister. There are a number of arts and cultural organizations that we've been able to document within the existing conditions report that was done by our subconsultant, Todd Bressie, and he's identified much of the city's cultural and arts work as being on an informal basis and a lot of it's related to Latinx culture, including mural making, street art, mariachi bands, and Valle Folklorico, all of which go to make a very important part of that part of the cultural setting of the city. But of course, other types of cultures as well are informing the arts atmosphere in the city also. We have a section in our work on energy. There are two energy providers in the city, the Central Coast Community Energy, which is a bundler of sustainable energy, as well as Pacific Gas and Electric Company. Energy use in the city is consistent with energy use in similar sized cities in the state, and CCCE is on track to supply 33% of its electricity from renewable sources, and to exceed the goals that are set for it by supplying 100% with renewable sources by 2030. We've looked at geology and soils for this report as well. There are alluvial soils surrounding the city, of course, and very suitable for growing crops. There are also, as you all know, 4 important fault zones running essentially north-south through the city that include the Calaveras Fault and the Tres Pinos Fault that run right through the city itself, as well as the Sargent Fault, the San Andreas Fault, and the Quien Sabe Fault along either side of the city and up in the hills. So a lot of seismic potential. The city has historically been susceptible to earthquake-related hazards, which include both fault rupture, which happens at the time of an earthquake. If there is an earthquake, there can be really a rupture along a fault, but there's also something called aseismic creep, where there's very, very slight movement over time. This could be a quarter or an eighth of an inch in a year, but over time, that too really builds up, of course. And so if you're moving an eighth or maybe even it's a 16th of an inch, but over 10 or 20 years, things can actually have moved enough that it really does make a difference in maintaining your infrastructure and even maintaining buildings. So that's an important issue to understand as well. It's also important to understand that because of the great amount of Native American activity historically in this area, there could be significant paleontological resources that are yet to be unearthed, and that's an important policy issue as well. Moving on through the alphabet, we have greenhouse gas emissions. The city does meet current state emissions reduction goals. There are going to need to be more reductions in the future, and looking at the 5 sectors that we have on this graph, 3 where there really is room for further improvement are on residential buildings, non-residential buildings, and in the area of transportation, particularly in trying to reduce vehicle miles traveled in private automobiles. So those 3 issues will need to continue to be considered, and we will be developing with you a climate action plan that looks at reducing greenhouse gas emissions as part of this project. Next, we have public services and recreation, which looks at fire, police, school, and library and park issues. So all 5 of them covered there. The fire department has let us know that they foresee a need for 2 additional fire stations to serve future development. The police department believes that it could use additional staffing so as to decrease 911 response times. The school district, particularly at the high school level, is already exceeding its current capacity and needs some expansion as well. And the free library of the county is a great facility, but a lot smaller than one would like to see in a facility to serve a community the size of Hollister. The city is also working to meet a goal of 5 acres of parks per 1,000 residents as well. So all of these issues, police, fire, schools, library, and parks, will all require attention as we develop policies in the general plan. And then the last item on our list is wildfire. I actually have 2 slides here with some maps. Wildfire, I think, is on many of our minds these days, and the city is surrounded by hills with brush and that could be the subject of fire. One of the things we look at in doing wildfire planning is this area called the wildland urban interface, which is the place where wild areas that are shown outside on the white meet the city, which is this interior area in the white. And these salmon colored areas are all officially designated as wildland urban interface and are some of the areas that might be most susceptible to a fire within an urbanized or semi-urbanized area. And so understanding that wildland urban interface and how to plan and protect it is a very important part of this planning process. In addition to that, There is also a designation of moderate and high fire hazard. Those are primarily outside of our overall planning area, which is of course the purple dashed line. But there are some areas of moderate fire hazard to the east of Fairview, and then even high fire hazard when you get out a little farther, right along the edge of the planning area and outside the planning area. Those are not necessarily areas that will be urbanized under this general plan, but it's important to understand them. It's also, of course, important to understand that most of the city is in charge of the local, is under the responsibility of the Hollister Fire Department. The state of California is responsible for areas that are outside of the line that you see drawn on this map here, and which are primarily the areas of the high and moderate fire potential. So I think one last item here is climate change. We already talked about greenhouse gas emissions. There are a number of climate-related issues that will be facing the city over the next 20 or more years. These include droughts, which are the most frequent natural hazard that we're going to be seeing in California due to climate change. It's going to have a great effect on agricultural communities as there's less and less water for agriculture. Ironically, we also expect to see increased flooding because although there will be less rainfall overall, climate change, someone once told me that it really should be called climate weirding because it's not only additional heat and dryness, but there are spells of additional rain and storms as well. So we will see increased flooding, we'll see losses of crops, we'll see losses of field work. We will see additional extreme heat days. We expect to see those go up to 15 to 24 extremely hot days by the year 2100. And there will, of course, be increased climate wildfire risk as well. So to address these issues and to address greenhouse gas reduction, as I already mentioned, we'll be preparing a climate action plan as well. That's the end of the presentation. I'm going to stop the share for now, although we can, of course, go back to slides if you like. We will take questions from any of you. Then if there are members of the public who'd like to comment, we can do that. We can then take any closing questions or comments you might have. As I said, there's not an action item this evening, but so much as we want to acquaint you with this information so that when we move into policy development, you'll understand the basis for the policies that we're working to develop. So let me ask, I'll start again with Commissioner Huboy and ask if there are any questions that you have. We can take comments from you after the public comment.
I don't have any questions on what was presented. When we have a topic of existing conditions, though, I can think of other existing conditions that are worthy of discussion. I don't know if it's like.
All right, well, why don't we take any questions, take public comment, and then if you want to give us a list of those other items, we can look at them. I mean, we will be covering a number of items in part 2 of this work, but if there are items that are neither on the part 1 list nor the part 2 list that you want to make sure that we're aware of, we can hear about those this evening also.
Well, with that in thought, I'll withhold my comments until we have a presentation on part 2.
Okay, great. Councilmember Azendas, any questions before we go to public comment?
No questions at this time, thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor.
I don't have any questions, but I was concerned about the issue of the Native American tribes not responding. I want to make sure we get their input. Very important to get input from the tribes. There's a lot of areas that there's been development trying to be built in areas where the tribes have found out and been really upset that nobody's really consulted them on it because they are sacred areas. So we need to make sure that we bring them in as quickly as possible. And if you need help, I can make some phone calls.
Yeah, I think that might be great. I don't know if Abraham or Brian or someone is there. I believe staff has already tried to make phone calls as well as a letter, but I'm not familiar with the details.
I'll get a hold of Abraham. We'll find a way to make sure we
I
get.
see him with his microphone. Let's see if he wants to speak to the question.
Yes, that's true. Thank you, David, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely, we can definitely discuss. But yes, as you mentioned, David, you know, per law, we would have to reach out to the tribes that we have. First of all, we contacted the Native American Heritage Commission to provide a list of the tribes that are registered to receive contact information by law from the city of Hollister. We received that list and we reached out to them in particular for this general plan update, but in the past we've done so as well for other projects And we have in the past been in contact with at minimum one particular tribe, which was really good. We did do a consultation with them, and very important that we bring them in, as the mayor was indicating. We do have standard mitigation measures in place when we do have projects, in case, for example, and it's happened in the past, as the mayor alluded to, in regards to when we're actually out there doing construction, and if we find an article, if we find a fragment that may belong to a Native American tribe, we cease all construction at that time. We get a hold of the coroner. We make sure that we do a process. So we have it in place, but I think, like the mayor indicated, it's very important that we bring him in to be more involved. We would certainly welcome that opportunity. I'm looking forward to talking with you, Mr. Mayor, on that.
Thank you, Abraham. So, Mr. Mayor, I think if you maybe offline want to talk to staff and see about helping to make contact at this time, that's great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. I see one member of the public already with his hand up. That's Sean Tenenbaum. Now we have Jan Grist as well, so we'll take comments from them, and then anyone else who may wish to speak, and then we'll come back to the GPAC for final questions and comments. Sean Tenenbaum. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time this evening. I just wanted to say hi to everybody. It was very informative. David, you did a nice job of narrating, and I really look forward to working with the group, and look forward to the next session. So thanks so much for having me.
Okay. Thank you. Jan Grist. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go.
Thank you. On page 1514, under the Hollister School District in 15.2.3.1, the children that are going to Gavilan Hills Elementary School will be going to Rancho Santana School. And it's in that first paragraph, you have them going to the Hollister Dual Language Academy. So when Rancho Santana School opens, the children at Gavilan Hills School will be going to the new school.
Okay.
So that
great.
just needs to be corrected.
Thank you for that correction. Carrie is writing that down, right? And we'll get that corrected. And that, let me say for everyone, one of the reasons we published this early in the process, well, one of them is to provide the foundation for our work, but the other is so that we can get corrections from all of you who know additional things, because we certainly know we're not perfect on all of this work. So, Ms. Grist, I really appreciate you being from the school board here to help with that. If you have any other comments as you read this over the next month or two, feel free to send those to city staff and they'll forward them to us also. But
well, I read it all and everything else was great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, next speaker is Carminder Brown, and that's the last hand up right now. We'll recognize her and see if anyone else wants to speak after that. Ms. Brown.
Hi, with regard to the biological resources and also the wildfire section, I just wanted to comment that we do have a lot of really helpful local experts who could help make this, product as accurate as possible. And for example, we have several botanists who reside in Hollister who work for Pinnacles National Park, for Hollister Hills, SVRA, and also for the Bureau of Land Management. We went through so quickly that I didn't really have a chance to really digest what you said about plant resources, but I would really encourage you to reach out to some of those folks. And with regard to wildfire, we have the San Benito Fire Safe Council, which is a group that has really spent a lot of time and energy and raised funds to look at wildfire protection on the perimeter areas that showed in your map. So I'd encourage you to reach out to them also for comment on the final document. And again, I'm happy to provide you with specific contacts offline.
Yeah, that would be great. If you could send those, we'll make a note for ourselves, by which I mean Carrie will make that note. And Carrie can contact city staff and they will then be in touch with you to get some specific names. And what we'd be happy, I just gave, of course, sort of a 30,000 foot overview tonight. They're all very detailed reports that are complete at this point, or complete at least in the draft form. And it would be great to be able to publish those chapters. They are public review documents right now, so it would be great to be able to publish them to specific people, both biologists and wildfire experts, and get their review and any comment they have. So we'll be in touch and get those contacts from you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Any other hands to be raised? Any other questions or comments from the public? Okay, here's Jonathan Casey. Go ahead, Mr. Casey.
Hi, I'm John Casey. I'm a resident of Hollister. I noticed that in the next round, we'll be talking a little bit about housing. I'm a little concerned about the vision statement that was adopted that talks about our inclusivity, and while we have lots of houses for people that are going to be commuting, we do need to look at affordable housing here. I know there's some mixed use projects and things like that that are inside city limits, as well as our sphere of influence around the city. So I think there's a couple of local folks that are running for office that talk about, projects that even have some affordable housing components, 20%, 30% have to be to affordable housing. And I think, again, I may be jumping the gun because that may be the next session, but I think that's an important factor, especially since that's seems to be a hot topic for a lot of folks in Hollister. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We will definitely take that into account, and particularly as we do the Part 2 reports. All right, are there any other members of the public who would like to speak? If so, raise a hand. If not, I think Mr. Casey may have been the last person, and we'll come back to the GPEC then. I'll formally close the public comment period. And I guess we should go back to Commissioner Huboy first. I know, Mr. Huboy, you said you might have other comments as well, but I think you said you had some other existing conditions items that you aren't sure are being covered and you wanted to bring to our attention. So now would be a great time to do that.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's really important that we really take a good look at these existing conditions, sometimes with an unjaundiced eye, if you will. We talk about housing and our infrastructure. We really need to take a very, very objective look at our infrastructure, our roads and transportation system, where we are with our wastewater. And I think that probably I would expect that in Part 2. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's a little hard to hear you, but we can hear you saying that, and I know I'm interrupting partially to say if you could be closer to the microphone, it'd be great, but I heard you mention infrastructure, sewer, water, roads, and transportation, and those are all items that we are covering in Part 2 of our work.
And I think that would be, I really look forward to that presentation, and I'll really be, I'm sure the other members of the general public will do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Resendez, any questions or comments from you?
Just, I guess, some comments in closing, generally speaking. I was a little bit concerned about hearing about the salamanders that we're actually developing there, because looking at the image that you guys provided, it looks like that's a heavily populated area, so I don't know why we're developing there.
Can I just interject before you go on and say, honestly, I was surprised to learn this also, that it is designated critical habitat. It's a federal designation that is not necessarily enforced by the federal government because they don't have direct land use authority, of course. If there were a known location of exactly some specific habitat, they might intervene, but what we've heard otherwise is that it really is up to the county when they do their development and the city when it approves development to check and do appropriate mitigation. But yet I want to echo your concern, and I'm glad to hear you say it. It's an item of, I think of all the items that have come up here, it's one of 3 or 4 or 5 that I think warrants the most attention, and that we will continue to work with the county, with our biologists, with Fish and Wildlife at both the state and federal levels, and then ultimately with the GPAC to try and address that in an appropriate way.
For that. The other thing that was a little bit concerning was about the fire hazard. I don't think that I think that's a big concern of the public that lives here. And if we could just find ways to strengthen our partnership with the state, it looks like most of that area is belonging to the state. So if we can ensure that it's being taken care of, and then we can mitigate any chances of having a potential fire here. That's something else that jumped up on my radar. And then just generally speaking, I guess, I've got to be quite honest, I don't think that we've always developed in a way that is very responsible at times. I am very optimistic about how we are going to move forward in the future, especially working on this committee. And I just want to see, in general terms, that we are very inclusive, of course, reaching out to our Native American population here. I'm glad to hear that we're going to try a little bit harder to engage them. And that we just develop and grow in a sensible way that is going to help not only that makes sense for the public that lives here, that they can actually afford to live here, but that we do take into consideration that they don't have any long-term impacts that are going to harm them or our environment. I think it's really important that we put that at the forefront. So I'm glad to see that you guys are talking about those things. I think Hollister is a absolute jewel. There's so much potential here to grow in a sensible way. So I'm very much looking forward to continuing the conversation. And again, thank you to everybody that took part in it and to all the staff that's working on it. You guys amaze me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, with your permission, there is one member of the audience who's raised her hand. Typically, I mean, I have closed the comment period and it would be up to you, but it's only 7:30, and with one hand raised, I might suggest that we take one more comment.
We're doing good on time. So being that it is Jan, go ahead, Jan.
Yeah. Staff, can you put Jan on? There she is, and unmute
Thank
yourself.
you.
Go ahead.
In regards to the developing and the building of our new school at Rancho Santana, the state was the one that controlled the environmental controls on the salamander and the burrowing owl. And they held us up for 3 or 4 months, waiting for to see activity, to see what they could find. And once they gave the okay, then we were allowed to build. But there was a lot of due diligence, and we were supposed to start in April, and we did not begin until August because of the critters. So there is a lot of consideration that is placed on the tiger salamander and on the burrowing owl. So I just, we cared for the little cries. They were okay.
Great, thank you for that information. All right, Mr. Mayor, I think we're down to you for the last word in terms of comments or questions, and then I'll talk about our next meeting and we'll go from there.
Thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Resendez for bringing up the Fairview issue and some of the other areas of habitat. It's been one of the things I have been talking about for years, that we can't continue down this path knowingly disrupting certain areas and then just saying we'll mitigate it and we'll fix it later. These are very important areas to us. I want to make sure that as we move forward, and I know we're doing that here, that we take that into account and we understand that and don't have the answer just like, oh, well, we'll just mitigate and we'll fix it and we'll build the homes there and everything will be all right over time. I want to make sure we're working towards protecting these areas sooner rather than later. And I want to thank Mr. Huboy for bringing up the infrastructure issue. I don't think a lot of people understand some of the issues we do have, and I know that's coming up, but it's a very, people don't understand the cost of infrastructure and how that can really destroy a community when you can't afford to not only not afford to build it, but maintain it. And that's something that the public needs to be aware of. So we're planning this process correctly. And that's, again, why I've been so in favor of this whole general plan update, because it's a lot of information we need to do, and we need to do it now. So thank you. Thank you, everyone that was involved in all the comments tonight.
Thank you. And I might just mention in that regard, it's a thing I don't know that we were planning to cover, but I'll mention it to Carrie in case we could. There are a number of studies going back to a major study that was done in the 90s by Bank of America that quantify more on a state and national basis the differences cost to serve, both for building infrastructure and then maintaining the infrastructure in outlying areas versus more centralized areas. And we probably can't get that level of detail for Hollister itself. It's very hard to calculate at the local level, but being able to give to you some of those statewide numbers or national numbers that give a comparison of costs, again, both to build and to serve, for various locations of development relative to your existing core, I think that might be instructive for you all to have also. So given the comments I've heard from the three of you this evening, we'll try and pull a little bit of that together from existing studies done by others so that you have that information too.
Thank you.
No. All right. I think we're pretty much at the end of our agenda. The last item is just to talk about our future steps. We are going to be finishing up over the next couple of weeks the Part 2 existing conditions work, including our assessment of the existing general plan. And all of that will come to you at meeting number 3, which is already scheduled for Tuesday, November 17th, again at 6:00 p.m., scheduled to end no later than 8 p.m. So wanted to mention that for the 3 committee members here and also for the members of the public who are in attendance, so you can mark your calendars. We will, of course, be sending out email reminders also, but wanted you to have that on your calendars now, November 17th from 6 to 8 p.m. I'll ask in order first if GPEC members have anything else, then I'll check with Carrie, and then we'll go back to staff to see if staff members want to end with anything, and then we can close the meeting. Committee members, any final words?
I just want
you, boy.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ignacio. Thank you. Hope you can hear me now. I just want to say thank you. It looks like we're making good progress. I'm glad we're come up with a vision statement that we all can agree on, and that's pretty much what everything is based on. So, and thank you. I appreciate your indulgence in letting me participate in this tonight, and be looking forward to GPAC 2 on November 17th. I have it penciled in and put in my calendar and I get in the office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Resendez?
Yes, thank you. Just in terms of process, you said that the vision statement is going to go to the planning commissioner and then the city council. Will there be potential changes from those 2 visits, or how does that work?
I guess the short answer to that is yes. Ultimately, of course, the entire general plan has to be reviewed and moved forward by the Planning Commission, and then it ultimately has to be reviewed and adopted by the City Council. And part of the reasons that we do interim check-ins is to make sure we're going in the right direction. So we're hopeful, of course, that your committee is a good reflection of the council, the Planning Commission and the Council. That's part of the reason that you all are appointed. But we do have within our scope of work a couple of check-in points through the course of the project to make sure that we're staying on the same track. If members of the Planning Commission, or particularly the Council, if they were to say to us, well, no, actually, that's not our vision, and if a majority of council members said that, I think we would want to reopen that and make sure that we have a vision that's supported by a majority of the council. I don't foresee that happening just because we have the 3 of you here. But that is the reason we check in as we are moving along, is that we don't want to be surprised at the end by the council suddenly saying, well, we don't really agree with what the committee did. So that is why we're checking in.
Okay, so obviously Abraham, staff that's listening, for me, I sit on the city council. It just helps me since I'm over here, if we can like have those changes made in bold or red. So it's just easier for me to read, so I know I can just follow along. I guess that's why I was asking that.
Right, yeah. So when we publish this, we will publish it with the edits in bold or red type, yes.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, any final comments?
I don't have any other comments other than to say thank you to everyone who's been involved. And I do like the direction we're going in. And it's great to see that the community has a common vision on this. And out in public, sometimes we don't realize that. And I think sometimes we're so busy not listening to each other. But when we go off alone, we all seem to come back with that same idea, the same vision of that small town charm, the beautiful area that we live in, the agriculture that we want to preserve. And I was really happy to see that tonight. And I want to thank your staff and of course all the city staff. And again, everybody that's been participating for their vision together.
Thank you very much. I see that we do have one more hand raised. I'm not sure how to deal with that at this point. Mr. Mayor, it's Christina Chavez Wyatt. Should we take one more public comment before we go to Carrie and staff?
We will take one more.
Okay, I will say for the record, for both of you who've spoken, that typically, especially if it's a bigger agenda, and once we have a committee of 5, we may not be able to do that at future meetings, but let's go ahead and recognize Ms. Wyatt right now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I would just request the opportunity for adjourning the meeting in memory of our lost Resource Management Agency Director, Harry Mavrogenis. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment. We can come back. We will do that, I think, through the mayor when we adjourn the meeting. Carrie, is there anything you need to bring up for us to talk about tonight? Are we good? Okay, I see a shaking no. Staff, do you have any items that you want to bring up before we close?
Thank you for the opportunity, David. At this time, we don't have any items. We just want to express our thanks to PlaceWorks. It's been really great working with you so far, and we look forward to the future and getting a really good document for our precious community. We meet in a weekly basis at minimum with us, and if we need to meet with the county as well as we've done in recent times. It's been really great. David, Carrie, and your team, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, staff, and all you folks there at City Hall. Mr. Mayor, I think it would be up to you to adjourn the meeting and to do so in honor of the county manager who did pass away tragically this past week or two.
Yes. So I do want to say, we lost Harry a few weeks ago. We did adjourn our city council meeting in honor of him at our previous meeting. He was very involved in a lot of the planning in the county, and we did work together quite well on a lot of projects. So we're going to miss him, and condolences to his family. So if we can adjourn in the memory of Harry Mavrogenis, if the directors would be, are we doing a motion? Do we have to do motions on this or just consensus on this?
I think you can just consent and adjourn, yes, Mr. Mayor.
All right. So is there a consensus from the members to adjourn in memory of Mr. Mavrogenis?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you all, and we will see you at the next meeting.
In November, thank you.
Good night.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.